we should do it. Good evening, gentlemen. The time is now officially 6 o'clock, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Let me stand for that, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Our clerk, Jay, will do roll call.
He will sort of do the roll call. I forgot to bring my complete roster of the commission with me, so I'm just going to, I am going to go through the people who are here, note their presence, and which is all I would have done anyway. Mr. Giguere?
Yeah.
Mr. Adams?
Here.
Mr. Flanagan? Here. Mr. Freeling?
Here.
Ms. Van?
Here.
Mr. Gaffney is here. There are 6 people here, and that constitutes a quorum, so we can proceed.
Thank you. First on our agenda is the approval of minutes and prior minutes.
You have a motion to approve the prior minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Freeling, do we have a second? Mr. Giguere? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's great.
Under old business, as what I always try to do each meeting is to give you any updates on our efforts regarding, suicide prevention. Unfortunately, my guest speaker had to cancel basically last minute. She was called into work and had to travel. She regretted having to do so because she was looking forward to attending, but we were more than happy to move her out to next month's meeting, so she will be here in November to speak. As always, keeping an eye and ear out for any organizations, any events. Last month's meeting was great. Our guest speaker then, I believe her name was Gail, gave us a wealth of information, so we hope to be working closely with her on events, future events, and efforts that we can put forth in kind of keeping this an ongoing thing. Mr. Hall, who isn't here today, brought up some great ideas, like a virtual run, walk, and things and such, and the 4 of us that got together, Eric, Adam, Norm, and I, met last month, and we have begun the beginning steps of planning an event in December, so we will move forward with that. We plan on meeting off the record tonight as well to continue our efforts with that. So that will take care of old business.
May I take
Absolutely.
May I take a matter out of sequence?
Absolutely.
Mr. Matt Elkins is here, the commander of the Veterans Council. He had extended an invitation to the commission to attend their Veterans Day event, but he wanted to present it himself, and so we're happy to welcome and recognize Mr. Elkins.
Welcome.
Thank you. As Mr. Gaffney said, I'm the commander for the Greater Lowell Veterans Council, and part of what I've been doing for the last 3 years is trying to reunite the veterans community, and part of that was also reaching out to the commission and trying to work collaboratively. And I feel that we do have an open communication, especially with Mr. Peasley, being our liaison between the two organizations. But this Veterans Day is the 100th anniversary of Veterans Day. We are planning a rather different, I'm hoping, very inclusive program. And I would like to extend officially an invitation to everybody here and your veterans organizations that you may belong to. If Mr. Gaffney wouldn't mind being the contact person on that, letting me know head counts and stuff so we can take care of catering. It is going to be on Veterans Day at the Lowell Memorial Auditorium. We've actually outgrew the fall of flags, so now everything's going to be on the floor. Very communal feel, round tables, everyone's going to be sitting together instead of rows. Breakfast is going to start at 10 o'clock this year, and the speaking program is going to begin at 11. So everything's going to be on the floor. We will have our closing ceremonies out at the Concord River, like we usually do when we're at the auditorium, and we're looking at a sizable attendance. And this year we are going to actually have about 40 children doing a tribute to veterans. I've been working with one of the schools in Drake, so hopefully, you can all come, and it'll be a great way for the kids to talk to vets, and do a little meet and greet, because they don't always have that. And I know some of their families are veterans, but to really be immersed, I think it would be a great opportunity for everybody. So I really look forward to seeing everybody there, and the communication that I have with Mr. Gaffney on meetings and everything. By the way, our next meeting is the 22nd of this month, Lowell Auditorium, rear entrance. We always meet, it's at 7 o'clock. We always meet the fourth Monday of every month, with the exception of December, starting at 7. Again, rear entrance. It's an open meeting. Anybody can come. I have it so people can bring their ideas to the floor and everything. And again, I'm trying to bring a lot of inclusivity with the veterans community and a lot of communication. So hopefully, see some members there for our regular meetings as well. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. October 22nd, 7 o'clock, rear entrance of the auditorium. And so if you're looking at the back, you see the stage doors where they bring, it's the ramp off to the right-hand side. You go in where the first door's on the left.
Thank
Yeah, you're welcome. So would anybody have any questions about, anything that the council might be doing or anything, while I'm here, or?
I don't have any questions, but I'd certainly love to speak and attest to how wonderful the ceremony was last year. I attended, and phenomenal. It was great. Eric sang and everything, and that was a great
If I may ask, which one were you at? 'Cause I know we have 3 a year.
I believe it was the veterans
That was
at the Lowell Memorial Auditorium, right, with the round table.
that was Memorial Day.
Oh,
year.
okay,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
terrific. So it will be conducted kind of the same way.
Yes.
Then it still would be a wonderful event. I think we all were in attendance. Adam, you weren't on yet.
I think we were at the Veterans Day too, and that was a great
Yes.
ceremony.
Yes, it really
Over
is.
at the Talent Club.
Yes.
Last year. Yes.
Yes.
Also,
terrific.
what I'm also working on, it hasn't been 100% confirmed, been working with Dave Susi from Heart of the Traveling Soldier. He has a memorial that he has for World War I all the way up till now. And instead of just leaving the Hall of Flags vacant, we're working on bringing his museum into the Hall of Flags for Veterans Day. So we're working on something very large for the 100th anniversary. So again, I hope everyone can make it, and I am very honored to be able to address.
When was that? On what day was that going to be? At what time, rather?
For which?
The Veterans Day 100?
Veterans Day is November 11th.
Right, but what time?
Breakfast starts at 10 o'clock, and the speaking program will start at 11.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We look forward to it. Do you have a question? Sure.
Are you going to have the November 7th, December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day?
Always, sir. Always.
Would you like to speak on that?
For Pearl Harbor? Are you asking if I'm going to speak, or do I need speakers?
I'd like to address the commission on Harbor Day.
Oh, thank you. We do 3 events a year. We do Veterans Day, Pearl Harbor Day, and Memorial Day. Pearl Harbor Day is always on December 7th. Don't have the scheduling set on that, but as soon as I get that out, I can definitely send it out to Mr. Gaffney. Planning one event at a time, but we pretty much have a framework for the other events. But yes, we do have that, and I would love, in anything that we do, I would love to have the commission involved, have an attendance, because we can do only so much. We're a grassroots organization, although we have like 20 organizations under us, but the commission has the power of the city. And you guys can do things that we can't, and we can get out there into the community where the commission may not be able to, especially with the base that we have with the amount of organizations. And we're growing. We have more organizations looking to join us. We have also, we have a TV show that we're working and producing. Hopefully starting in the next couple of months, so we'll be able to get people out there, and I would love to have a cooperative, probably have someone from the commission at some point come in and talk about what the commission does. So we're really trying to get out there, but we can only do so much. You guys are constrained by city ordinances and everything else, so the cooperative is something that I've been really working for the last 3 years, so we can really best, take care of our veterans. Because if we're not going to do it, nobody else is going to, unfortunately. So, but is there any other questions or? No.
No, thank you for being
Look
here.
forward to
It's
seeing
always,
you at
it's always
Veterans
good to
Day.
see you.
Look forward to having everyone there too. Thank you very much.
And thank you for the invite. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Love to
Have a good
attend.
night.
Thank you.
I may say, I've attended the December 7th function. I know Jay has, I know Norman has.
Oh, I've been doing that for years.
It's a very stirring presentation. It's well worth attending. And they've had it on December 7th for many years. And believe me, it's well worth attending. And if the members here can find the time to go to it, they'll be there every year after. The men and women that died on Pearl Harbor, it wasn't just the men that run ships, it was the women on Pearl Harbor that died as well, and they should be recognized. It was quite a tragedy in America's military history, and by recognizing that date, that time, on December 7th, we as military veterans should recognize that. I look forward to December 7th for the recognition that's given that day.
Absolutely. And let me not be remiss in failing to publicly thank you for your efforts. You guys do great work, and everything that you do for veterans, every ceremony, every holiday, every year. So we'd love to be able to kind of join forces. I'd love to be able to meet with you at some point, also to see how we can work together in expanding what we do here as well. It sounds like you have a good following and are able to reach more vets than we've been able to. So I'd love to be able to expand on that. So. Thank you again.
Like I said, Mr. Gaffney has my contact information. Please, provide that to her or any member of the commission that wishes to get in contact with me.
Excellent.
Terrific. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Matt. The next item I have is this veteran month issue.
Next, what we have is the Veteran of the Month eligibility.
Excuse me, are we in the new business?
Oh, my apologies. Yes, under new business.
Yes. If you don't mind, I was contacted today by a gentleman from Dracut, Tony Achinsky, on 2 items. And number 1, he asked me to contact Mr. Anthony Bladis, who is the head of guidance at the regional school in Tingsboro. And on November 8th, from 5 to 8, there is a function for veterans to be recognized. They're having a dinner where they will recognize 4 veterans, an Army veteran, an Army Air Corps veteran, a Navy veteran, and a Marine Corps veteran. And Mr. Bladis is asking if we can put forth the names of 4 veterans. I've already taken care of the Army veteran, but he's looking for a veteran from the other 3 services who will be recognized at the dinner. And he's looking for a brief resume of those men or women. And these folks will be asked to give a 15-minute presentation as to what they did in the service. And there'll be students from the school there. So if the commission can come up with some names of veterans from World War II, he would like their names. So I'll speak to Eric if he can come up with some veterans, or if the commission can come up with some veterans. Mr. Bladis would like to have their names so he can put the program together.
The only other thing I can think of is that I have I have the Veterans Council email list. It has about 50 names on it, and it includes all the leadership of the different veterans organizations,
Right.
and some other people active. And so if I sent the request out to that mailing, it would have pretty good coverage in the veterans community.
Okay. So that's what he asked, if I could come up with, if our group could come up with some names of folks that could be part of this presentation. The second thing is Tony Achinsky, through his wife's family, has a POW from the Second World War. Now, this POW was in Japan when one of the atom bombs were dropped. Now, this man's name is either Bissett or Brissett.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Now, he was killed when the bomb was dropped. He died a few days later from radiation poisoning. And Tony Achinsky would like his name placed on the list of POWs in the Hall of Flag that's on the plaque. And he'd like the Veterans Commission to be the moving force to get this done. And Mike Peasley, being on the board as a trustee at the auditorium, should be one of the driving forces to get this done. And I thought Mike would be here, and I wanted to deliver that message to him personally. But so would you put this in the minutes of the meeting, a request through him to see if he could have Mr. I don't know if the man's name is Bissett or Brissett.
It's Brissett. Yes, he's from Centerville. I went to every year they do their memorial down over across from Top Donut.
Yes.
And his name is mentioned every year.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's Leo Brissett.
Yeah, now, I know there are other POWs from Lowell.
Right, there is. There's a square.
And I'd hate to have one name placed and other names forgotten that should be on there as well. And quite a few months ago, I went on a campaign of my own to try to get other POWs' names included on that. So I know there's other POWs that should be included. So maybe through Mike, more of an official search should be conducted on this.
Do you need a name from World War II? Not Korea, right? It has to be World War II.
No.
Oh,
Any POW
because I got an
that's
uncle.
known.
I got an uncle that was a POW
Yeah.
in Korea.
It's a shame that a lot of these men are forgotten. Now, I know there's a lot of women Army nurses that went through hell in the Philippines, that were in the hospitals, that were taken prisoner by the Japanese. that have been forgotten. So I'd like to see something done to recognize all the POWs. And maybe what we can do, if you don't mind, that we may get a newspaper reporter to do an article in that. And a lot of the POWs have died, but maybe we can have a newspaper article done, and maybe their families can come out of the shadows and say, hey, my great aunt or my uncle or my grandfather was a prisoner, and they should be recognized as well. You know, maybe we can get a movement going to get them recognized, you know?
Absolutely. I'm all for that, for sure. Did you have a suggestion on how we could maybe do that search and how we could find? Yep, go ahead.
What I was going to ask if Mr. Gaffney could email me an official request. I'll read it at the next meeting so I could forward all of the contact information of all of our delegates. Because, you know, as you know, I can't do anything without, but I'm fully on board with that because, again, more cooperation that we have, better. Also, reaching out about POWs, Barbara Gribbs or Zibbs, always mess up her last name. She's the co-coordinator for Massachusetts for the POW MIA National League of Families. Very good friends with her. I can reach out to her, and if Mr. Gaffney, if I have your permission, to give her your contact information.
Sure.
So that way she can talk with the commission. She has all the information you possibly would ever need, and then some, on, you know, POWs and such. So, and again, this is one of those things I was talking about, you know, the joint cooperation. So, like I said, if I can get the official request for emails, I'll be more than happy to forward that over. For me to release the delegate information.
Okay.
For the council, so they can go back to their representatives and their organizations to send out the information, and also I'll bring up I'll forward your contact information to Barbara, so that can start. I don't know if there was anything else that was brought up, but yeah.
All right, we'll be in touch.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
On the issue of the Veteran of the Month, we often find ourselves in a situation where we're looking for good eligible nominees to be appointed to the veteran, to be voted as Veterans of the Month. I would like to renew some efforts to reach out to some organizations to suggest nominees, but over the last few meetings there's been some discussion as to exactly what the eligibility was going to be. So before I initiated any further recruitment efforts, I wanted to try and settle that if I could. And I'm not sure if we ever did have an official written eligibility. Option one is where I thought we settled in the last time when Mr. Hall suggested opening it up to former residents of Lowell as well as current residents of Lowell. During the last meeting, I think, or perhaps in some discussions afterward, Mr. Gagier suggested maybe the focus should be on the contribution of the city of Lowell without regard to the residents of the city of Lowell. So I've got a couple of options here. One is a veteran who is a current or former Lowell resident deserves to be recognized. One is just a veteran who deserves to be recognized for service to country and contribution to the Lowell community. And 2A is the same as 2, except it makes it clear that the Lowell residence is not a requirement. So I don't know if anybody has any feelings one way or another.
I would say that the requirement to be a Lowell resident, I think that's negligible. If you served your country and you served Lowell, I think that's satisfactory. Because technically when I joined the board, I didn't live in Lowell. I lived in Chelmsford when I moved. And now I live in Lowell, so if that was, you know, the classification, I wouldn't have been eligible. But, you know, I think that if you've given whatever you've given to both sides, it shouldn't matter where you live now or where you lived in doing it. If you chose to live in Dracut and drove to Lowell every day for work, but served the city for 20 years, I'd argue you served Lowell better than Dracut, other than paying property taxes.
Through the chair, could I ask you a question, Mr. Freely? Would you prefer just option 2, which doesn't make reference to Lowell being a requirement, or would you prefer 2A, where it specifically states that residence is not a requirement?
I think to eliminate ambiguity in the future, let's say all of us are no longer on the board and somebody else is sitting in these seats, to stipulate that Lowell is not a requirement. It's just service to the city and service to your country. But your residency is something that is not a requirement. So stating it expressly, I think, makes it very simple.
So would your preference be
2A.
2A?
Yeah.
Would you make a motion to adopt that?
I would motion to adopt 2A.
Is there a second?
I think I would second that. I'll second that.
Yep, I would second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You are, okay. That's all right.
Yeah, I think it's a Lowell award, it should be given to a Lowell citizen.
There are, I don't have strong feelings one way or another. The only thing in favor of 2A or 2, the only things I would say is that there are a lot of people who don't live in Chelmsford and who make a strong contribution to Lowell. I know many of the other, we're not really a nonprofit, but a lot of the nonprofits who give their annual awards do recognize people who've made contributions to the Lowell organization, but who might live in Tewksbury or Chelmsford. So, and the other issue, the more practical issue, is by opening up a little bit more, we are more likely to fulfill our requirement for 4 candidates a quarter. That's, you wish to be recorded as no, Mr. Flanagan?
Excuse me?
You wish to be recorded as no?
Oh, definitely.
All right, okay. So it looks like we have are you in favor? All right,
Nathan's motion.
I'm sorry?
I was just thinking what he said about being a Lowell resident. I think that if the person, whether it be male, female, whatever, whoever we're going to recognize, I think the stipulation should be that they should have been from Lowell at one time, not necessarily a resident at the moment. So, it's a tough one. It should be a resident, but yet you're kind of like, I don't know.
But if they're, and obviously I think this motion is not going to pass as it stands right now. There's more conversation. So
Again?
if I said I don't think that we can approve the motion.
Well, we did, I think we did approve it.
Yeah,
The reason I say that, and I don't know if we can backtrack, but the reason I say that is I understand your point, Mr. Flanagan. Obviously, it makes perfect sense. I also understand your point, but I looked at this when the agenda was sent out previously because I knew that this would be one of those like 100 different idea situations. So for myself, I was born in San Diego, California. I was raised in Bakersfield. I serve the Lowell Veterans Commission. However, if I were to be offered an award in the same stead saying that I was going to be the Veteran of the Month, technically it would be for the city of San Diego. I only spent 8 years there as a kid. So what real service have I given to the city, whereas here, I pay my taxes, I live here, I shop here, I serve on the commission. I feel like this is where more of my value is driven rather than where I called my residence as a kid, which wasn't even my choice, right? I don't know if that addresses it. But.
That's a valid point, and I think that when that was brought up was kind of what brought this all up and the opposing views and thoughts of it. it is very difficult to kind of come to, you know, a point where all are in agreement, because every one of you that has brought something up about it has made absolutely valid points. I mean, my first and foremost thing about the Veteran of the Month program is I want to recognize all veterans, you know, regardless of where they, but where are the boundaries? You know, do we go into other towns? Do we go into other states? Do we, you know, so we do have to find some kind of structure to allow for this program to continue within the realms of what we can manage and what we can handle. I think aside from residency and whether they lived here or now or they lived here at one point, I think the most important factor that we need to consider with this program is that they've contributed to the city of Lowell. I think that has always stood as far as a requirement for this program.
And that's the other thing that we should recognize, is make sure that they actually did something for the community, not just being there because they're a figurehead or whatever.
Right, and to that point, so you have two veterans, one who's lived here all of his and her life, didn't really contribute, you know, to the city, but you have another veteran that has lived here for 6 months, or we'll go a little longer, for a year, and already within that year has contributed very much to, you know, veterans, say joining the Veterans Commission, or, you know, joining the movement towards suicide prevention. Between the two, the longtime resident that really didn't contribute much, or the 1 year resident that has done so much already, I'd rather choose the veteran that has contributed. So that's just something, again, for us to consider. I'm open to hearing.
I know of someone in particular that's a resident of Westford, and they do a lot for the city of Lowell.
Right.
So, I mean, there's got to be some kind of fine line as what we're going to do. I mean, do we honor somebody that's a resident of the city of Lowell, been a resident for X amount of years, but really didn't do that much? Or do we honor the guy from Chelmsford, Tewksbury, or wherever that has contributed to the city, he's made all the veterans events? It's kind of a fine line. I mean, it can go both ways.
Right.
Let me try something. This is not a formal vote, it's kind of a test. How many want to make residency or former residency a requirement? Raise your hand. So 3, 4, all right. So would someone move reconsideration of the last vote? All those in favor?
Could I have, once, the way I was looking at it was that when I came on the board, there was a lot of issues with getting people to come forward and have their name put into the hat for this award. And I believe me, I'd love to be able to pick a Lowell veteran every day. But if that veteran has given service to the city, let's say it's a veteran that serves on the police department that lives in a different town, that person should be recognized, or a fireman or a teacher. You know, we want to be able to pull those people in and say, yeah, we recognize you for your service to the city. I would say that maybe we make residency, if you are a resident, maybe we could do it in a staggered category where you would have a resident would take precedent over a non-resident, but when it comes down to it, you know, we'll have the ability to pick other non-residents that work for the city or have given to the city as well, you know, so that way we have that kind of difference in between it, but we give precedent to a Lowell veteran. I think that would be a good one, and I think that would probably fall under the option 2.
Yep.
Am I looking at it right?
Yeah. 2A.
Yep.
No, the 2A though, the 2A takes out the residency, you know, and
I mean, personally, every veteran should be recognized, you know, if somebody did something, whether he lives in Lowell, Drake, or Tewksbury. Yeah. It's, again, it's a fine line. It's how do we...
We're drawing the line based on service to the city.
Yeah.
That's the
It just-
crux
yeah.
of this whole award, and the whole sentiment behind it is service to the city,
Service to
not
the city.
where did you live and how did you serve to the city. I think, and I hate using sports as an analogy, but if you look at an athlete who may have been using steroids, they get a little asterisk at the end of their name. They still did what they did, but it comes with an additional something. I think it's something like that, where if you served 20 years and you retire from the police department, but you lived in Chelmsford, you deserve the award because you were a veteran as well. However, if you served the police department for 20 years and lived in Lowell, you take precedent over the guy who has the exact same criteria.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think if we can, option 2 is what I would actually make a motion for.
I think, I don't think I'd want to make that a formal part of the eligibility. I would like to say that if you served you contributed great service to the city of Lowell, but you lived in Chelmsford, you're eligible, but you're kind of a second-class eligibility to the person who lives in Lowell. I think that would be hard to manage.
You know, one of the proudest votes that I ever made in city commission was for a man who didn't contribute one iota to Lowell. He never gave anything to Lowell. He gave everything to his country. He was a prisoner of war for almost 5 years. He sat in a prisoner of war camp. That's where he contributed. Like John Luther King. He was an enlisted man in the army. His misfortune was being captured. He grew up in Lowell. He entered the service in Lowell. He didn't die in Lowell. He died in the western part of the Commonwealth. His name was McPhail. And when the Veterans Awards were created, I gladly nominated him. I didn't know him. I knew Walker. And I thought it would be a good time for the city of Lowell to recognize what he did. Lowell never recognized him. We never had a parade for him. He came home. His wife was living in Chelmsford at the time. Chelmsford recognized him. But he grew up in Lowell. His family was from Lowell. Lowell didn't do a single thing for that man. I thought it was time to get something. His widow was living in the western part of the state. She came here. We presented the award to her. It was time he did something. It was time the city of Lowell did something. He was a deserving individual. He didn't contribute anything to Lowell. Lowell contributed to him when the award was given. We have since given Veterans of the Month award to individuals who couldn't walk in his shoes. But we gave the award anyway. And I'm not here to say this person was more deserving than this person. All I'm saying is, he deserved the award. I'm glad I voted for it. I'm glad I made the motion to give the award to Mr. McPhail.
I think what is on the table, we had a motion which was voted for option number 2A.
Correct.
So there was a motion to reconsider. I don't remember whether we've acted on that or not.
I think we're drawing the line, and Mr. Flanagan, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're drawing the line that being a Lowell, we'll say maybe born resident or just resident at some point, is a requirement of the award. So we're shifting.
Or have preference.
Right. So if you were evaluating, they take a precedence. So if you had to classify it, it would be option 2. Is that correct? My understanding. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we were all in agreement.
We're in agreement for option 2.
Option 2.
As
Yes,
opposed to
with the stipulation that the Lowell, former Lowell resident, he would be the first when it came to a priority as to, if you had 2 people that both did the same thing, then you'd have to pick the Lowell.
If there are 2 people that did both the same thing,
And one wasn't,
they would both be nominated.
okay. All right. Yeah, so I say I'll vote for option 2. I mean,
Can I have a motion on option 2? Mr. Freeling?
I motion to amend the original decision from option 2A and vote in favor of option 2.
I'll second that.
Mr. Freeling. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Gugere. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Are you opposed, Mr. Flanagan? All right. All right. Okay.
It's good that we discuss these things.
Okay, if we are happy and comfortable with that, we'll move forward to the Veterans Brunch, which, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, right now, as it stands, Eric, Norm, Adam, and I are meeting with regard to that. I'd love to open the floor to the rest of the commission for any of you that are interested and would be and willing to help us. The more help, the better, but efforts will continue on that. Again, as it's stated on here, December 16th is the date that we're shooting for, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eric, when we last spoke over email, confirmed that he has spoken with Michelle at the Lowell Senior Center, so that, unless that changes, should be the venue or the location that we'll have the event at. And so I think that's all that we have.
I've got a little info for an
Terrific.
update. We were talking about getting the Toys for Tots to the event, and I'm also working. I'm sending out a few emails. I'm waiting for a response to get a Toys for Tots drop-off center here at the City of Lowell, down hopefully within this building, and then trying to get one of the representatives to come out and give a presentation, whether it be a Marine or somebody from the organization itself. So either next month or December, just to kind of give us a rundown of what they do, and hopefully get more toys in here. You know? So I'm working on that. And then again, hopefully having them at the brunch, we'll see, because we're trying to get children there as well.
Terrific, thank you.
All right.
And we'll speak on that more when we meet afterwards.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Next, we have for a future event, a women's initiative, which, again, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, we will look forward to working more closely with Gail, our last guest speaker. Sounds like she's got a great, following, and very much experienced in being able to reach out to veterans and women in particular. So we'll do that. Younger veteran outreach. I've just on my own have been kind of initiating as far as reaching out to younger, I guess I would be younger, veterans that are, in or around my age, and I'm happy to report that there's a couple that has joined the Lowell one, the VFW. So we're hoping to kind of get more of younger vets to join that as well. Veterans Fair. You have that as Mike and I being on that for the Veterans Fair. That's still tentatively right now. We've stepped away from that, but that was our original plan, which we had kind of hoped to take place sometime in May of next year. We thought we would tackle a smaller event, henceforth the December one, and then from there we'll move forward to having the bigger one in May. So, but other than that, I think that's it for future events. And under communications, information, scheduled events, you'll see on the agenda, October 14th, Strongwater Farm in Tewksbury will host a hoedown barbecue. Veterans Day, Matt spoke with us earlier. And do you want to do the history footnote, Jay?
What?
The history footnote you have?
No,
you
it was just a book I read, and I found it interesting that they had that equivalent of PTSD for somebody coming home from World War I, and the description of the struggles that veteran faced before he finally gave in and committed suicide were very, very, very graphic. But no, I just found it interesting that what is now PTSD was then deferred shell shock.
Is there anything else?
Question?
Sure.
Back to the brunch. Are you raising any money or getting any money for that, or?
That's what we were hoping to be able to speak to Eric about tonight. He, to be absolutely honest with you, is kind of the spearhead for this event. He has the contact information for the people that we are supposed to be working with, and he, as of right now, thinks that it's going to be very minimal. So I don't know that our efforts to have to raise a ton of money is necessary. So we've been in touch via email, so I will continue to make sure that that's squared away. Unfortunately, he is not present tonight, but I'm sure that he'll have a better update.
I belong to the Veterans Assisting Veterans, and I will contact John McDonald and see if they can donate some monies for a veterans organization for the Veterans Breakfast. I'm trying to see how much money we're going to need, and once I get that figure, I can possibly get the amount that we need.
And Eric, yes, Eric will be, the best bet.
I'll find out from Eric or you or whoever, and before we leave, I'd like to get numbers. I keep losing everybody's phone number.
Sure, no problem. No problem. So, unless anybody else has anything that they'd like to, sure.
There was one thing that we had discussed earlier about the outreach that we can do as the Veterans Commission and how we get in contact with veterans and how we stay current with veterans. And one of the things that I had tried to understand why we hadn't done it was social media outreach. So what I don't know if we need to do a subcommittee to discuss that.
Yeah, we went through that before.
Yeah, I know.
That's kind of a tough one.
With that being said, I'd like to entertain the idea of putting together probably some sort of guidelines and guidances as to what we should and can't do as far as outreach, and then try to get something going on, at least on LinkedIn. Veterans have free access to LinkedIn, and we're missing.
I mean, right now, your best bet really is Facebook. Everybody looks at Facebook.
Oh yeah, everybody does Facebook. With LinkedIn though, we veterans get a free gold subscription, I think it is, which gives you access to job boards and all kinds of other things. So it would be, I think, in our best interest to be able to try to contact veterans through those sources. I don't know if that should be something that we present like a motion, or if we go into a subcommittee, or
I can certainly work with you on that, Adam. You and I spoke kind of off the record and very briefly with regard to that. We did make our attempts to, reach out to the city to get their authorization to do so, and it was shot down a few times.
And the reason, and I think we had this discussion, is that when you go and you look on Facebook, you can see, in particular Facebook, you can see that the Historic Commission has a Facebook page, and other city branches and city organizations have a Facebook page. Well, why don't we? And one of the things that we're lacking is the ability to contact veterans and to be able to reach out to them, get them in and get them involved, get them out of their house, and get them with us. You know?
Another spot you could do that would be go to the Lowell VA. And I believe it's every third Tuesday of the month, they have like a pizza party over there. I forget the exact date. And they serve these veterans, and you should see they're in this little tiny room, and they serve pizzas for like 15, 20 and people. And then in the summer, the Air Force actually has a cookout for them down there, and they bring them in from Bedford or wherever. So that would be one area that.
Oh, no, definitely. I think the goal of the social media or email or electronic outreach is to get to access to the younger veterans, the guys that are in now, getting out now, the guys that are looking for the help, that are trying to find access to groups within the city. We have groups all over the city that we don't have connections with because we either don't know about them or people aren't coming in to talk to us. So it would be nice to be able to at least connect with them online, learn more about them, and be able to assist in their goals and getting out and contacting other veterans.
Believe it or not, usually they would rather go on a Facebook or whatever rather than face people. That's a big problem.
I think before we pursue it, we need to know what the requirements from the city are to establish that. Because I don't know what the other departments are that have one, but whatever they did, there's no reason why it couldn't be replicated in this sense.
Correct. You've fought that battle a little bit already.
Yes, we have.
Yes. I've made a few attempts and did reach out to somebody and was able to speak to someone at City Hall with regard to it, and we'll get back to you. I'll get back to you. I'm looking into it, and didn't really get a response. Our efforts in trying to make that happen pretty much came to a halt when Mike actually addressed the commission and said, in the interest of cooperating with the city, as to not stir the pot, if you would, and raise, issue, that we would continue to cooperate, and until they give us the yes, you can move forward, then we weren't going to move forward. Somebody else had suggested, even a Friends of the Lowell Veterans Commission, not an official page, and that was kind of frowned upon too. So I'm all for it. If you have any other ideas, if you want to make attempts yourself, I'm in full support of you. We can kind of, team up and bump heads together and come up with something. But that's where I kind of got with that. So
maybe if the law department or whoever's doing it, perhaps if for some future meeting we put together a formal motion that we were going to request permission to have a Facebook page and presented it to them, that might force them to do something as opposed to, we'll get back to you.
We could make a motion tonight.
I was just going to say that. Just make the motion tonight. And then what other departments have you seen that have one? Because I feel like that's actually a better way to go about it.
There was a few when I just did a cursory search the other night, and I saw a few departments. I mean, even the police department has one. So
there has to be rules and there have to be guidelines that govern how you use it and what you post.
Yeah.
So if they have access and we're an auxiliary portion of the city, why don't we have access?
Right.
What's the reason?
I would then make the motion to, a formal motion to have access to social media. LinkedIn and Facebook would be the two predominant ones.
What was the other one besides Facebook?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's a business-driven app. And there's, we could also add to that probably Rally Point. That's one that's directed towards veterans.
Who's the request going to?
To the law department.
Law department then, yeah. Maybe city solicitor? Yeah.
I'll
probably
second the motion.
City solicitor.
Okay.
I had to formulate that, sorry. Should have written it down.
That's good.
We're running out of time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Could I ask Mr. Freely a question? You were talking about rules and regulations as far as, which I assume deals with what could be posted and so forth. When you said that, did you have in mind some rules and regulations that you had developed or had access to?
So they're not necessarily ones that I've developed, but I know from working in corporate America that obviously there's a certain window and policy in place, just like there is with the military.
VA. The
So-
VA already has a policy and
Yeah.
it's online. Yeah.
Exactly. So if the police department has one, there's a chapter someplace in a book that like one person in the police department has probably ever read that knows what you can and can't post.
Right.
So if we can figure out what the format is, then we can initially write our version of that, and then if we can submit to the city based on what their guidelines are, I think we'll have a much easier time doing this than saying, we want a Facebook page, let us start one, and
Yeah.
with nothing behind it.
Does any other department of the city have a Facebook now?
I bet even the mayor's office
I
probably
think there was like
has
the
one.
Lowell Historic Commission had one. I want to say maybe the library had one.
Yeah, the planning board does.
Yeah,
All
the
right.
health department might have one. There was quite a few that I
Probably
saw.
every department has.
How about that we request permission?
Say they all have.
We request permission to initiate and operate a Facebook page, whatever it is, subject to the rules and regulations which govern other Facebooks by other organizations.
Yeah.
That sounds perfect.
I'll second that.
Yes. I mean, and certainly not to make it difficult. It was informal, obviously, but when I did speak to someone at the law department, I did kind of sort of officially, unofficially present that to her as far as what we would like to do with regard to having a Facebook page. I told her it was solely for the purpose of being able to reach out, seeing as how that's the vehicle that everybody's jumping on to get information out to the public, and that we certainly wouldn't put anything on there that would be inappropriate or that would reflect badly upon the city or to the commission. We would monitor it closely for, obscenities and so forth, inappropriate, content or comments, and so I did try to sell it as best as I could. The times that I spoke to them, and to no avail. So, but I love the idea of submitting a formal motion, so we'll move forward with that, and hopefully,
I think
fingers
you made
crossed.
the motion, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I think you seconded it?
Yes.
All those in favor?
He did as well.
Aye.
Aye.
Terrific. Okay, we are right on time, so
Oh, yeah.
any items will be addressed at the next meeting, and I will adjourn the meeting. Anybody motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn the meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Gugere, second. Mr. Freeling, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, gentlemen.
What? I'm sorry?